Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Volz, a sophomore here at SUNY Fredonia, and we're kind of getting into what I described earlier in the week as the lull of the sports season, at least on Fredonia's campus. Other sports, of course, professionally wise and stuff like that, are just heating up, and so I'll cover a lot of that today, but here on campus, it's kind of that period of time of a couple weeks where, fall sports are winding down. About half of the fall sports have already ended. I don't know if it's about half, but it's close to. And the winter sports are just starting, really not into the swing of things, and a few of them haven't even started yet and don't for another week or two. So there's not, as far as on campus, there's not a ton going on right now sports-wise. But there's still things because there's always things going on with sports here and there, as you'll find. So first, I'll start with the women's soccer team. Their season has come to an end. They finished out strong, actually. They defeated New Paltz 1-0 on Saturday. That game was here, and I was on the call for that game. It was not particularly warm at that game. It was not how it is today, certainly. I mean, I'm wearing shorts today. I looked at the weather last night, and I said, you know what? It's going to be the last couple days where it's going to be high 60s, low 70s. I'm taking full advantage, so I'm wearing shorts today. But that was not the case on Saturday. It was, the exact temperature, it was probably right around like 45 degrees-ish, but it felt a lot colder than that. And it was like, it's like, when it's like cold and it's not quite freezing rain, but it's still really cold rain. That's just that. I think that is the worst weather. Like, if I were to rank my weathers, like what my favorite type of weather is compared to my least favorite, like cold and rainy is probably at or near the bottom. At that point, I would much rather have it snow. 100%, 10 times out of 10, I would much rather have it snow than be just cold and rainy and ugh. But that's what it was on Saturday. I was up in the press box, which is kind of covered, but also kind of in the open. So I was protected from the elements a tiny bit, but not really. I was protected from the rain-ish, not at all from the cold. But, it didn't matter because Fredonia ended up beating New Paltz 1-0. Abby Simkowiak was remarkable in goal. She's taken over in the absence of Danny Rubino. Abby Simkowiak has taken over in goal, and she's given the Blue Devils everything. She gave Fredonia everything they could have asked of her. She's coming into a tough spot. It's a team that is struggling. She's a young goalkeeper. She's only a freshman. She's coming in, and she gave the Blue Devils everything they could have asked of her, and she was rewarded with a shutout in the final game of the season. And, of course, Gabby Irwin, another talented freshman on that Blue Devils roster, she scored the only goal of the game, and as they're saying goodbye to 4 different seniors, it was important for them to kind of almost, and I said this on the broadcast, ride off into the sunset with a victory. So they finished their season. The Blue Devils do not qualify for the SUNYAC playoffs. They finished their regular season at 6-8-2. Remember, this team only won 2 games last year. Remember, they went 2-9-5. They won 2 of their first 3 games, right? And then they didn't win again the rest of the season. So this is a team that you're talking about tripled their win total, won their first road game in 2 years, when they beat Hilbert 8-1 back in September. And there's a lot of improvement on that women's soccer team. Now to the men's soccer team. The men's soccer team also does not qualify for SUNYAC playoffs, and they ended their year with a 3-0 loss at New Paltz on Saturday. They actually end the year on a 5-game losing streak in which they only scored 2 goals across 5 games. So certainly a disappointing. The men's soccer team, they started really hot, but the Blue Devils just ran into a wall when they got into conference play. They finished with a 1-7-1 SUNYAC record. Definitely not what head coach PJ Gondik is looking for with his team. So the Blue Devils finish 5-8-4 and ultimately miss the SUNYAC playoffs. The men's and women's cross-country teams are getting ready for the SUNYAC championships this weekend. Those will be hosted by SUNY Oneonta. The men's race starts at 11 a.m., while the women's race starts at noon. Cross-country is a little bit different from other sports in how their championships run. And so, like, the top certain amount of runners from each team will run for your team at the conference championships. And then there's the Niagara Regional Championships, which are on Saturday, November 11th. That will be hosted by Houghton. So we will see if any Blue Devils make it that far. There's a few that have a good shot at it. There's definitely a few that have a shot at it, but we're going to have to see how SUNYAC championships shake out again this Saturday. Men run at 11 o'clock and the women run at noon. Well, the swimming and diving teams are underway. The men's swimming and diving team still looking for their first win, as they were at Pitt Bradford to start the season a couple weeks ago. Ended up losing that one, and then they were hosted Hobart College. It's the dynamic of Hobart and William Smith College is very interesting because what you essentially have. So Hobart, for anybody who's not familiar, most teams you have, like most colleges, whatever, like Fredonia, you have your men's teams and your women's teams, right? Hobart and William Smith College is a little bit different because the men's team is Hobart College. They are what is Hobart's mascot? I can't remember. I can never remember. The Statesman, that's what it was. I knew it was something not, conventional. But like the men's teams are the Hobart Statesmen and the women's teams are the William Smith Herons. So it's interesting. They operate a lot different than other teams or than other colleges do. And it's very unique in the way that they handle that. But those two schools both came to Fredonia for a swim meet last weekend, and both ultimately left with wins, as the Fredonia men's and women's swim teams both ended up falling in their respective meets. The men's swim and dive team is kind of in a tough spot because they only have 4 athletes on their roster, which is crazy to me. They only have 4 for a college team. That's wild. The women's swim and dive team still has an all right size team. But, I think for head coach Bill Bradley, you're going to struggle to win when you only have 4, because then you're going to have to run your swimmers in a lot of other athletes just to cover everything when, they may not be at their best. And there may be events where you might not have anybody. And that's the other tricky part is that, okay, if you got multiple events that you don't have anybody swimming in, that's going to make it awful difficult to come away with a win. So Coach Bradley and the men's swim and dive team, they're really in a tough spot. And I think they're just looking for their best from what they've got. It's like I compare it to cross country a lot. For anybody who might not be overly familiar with how cross country works, it's like you have a certain amount of runners. You need 5 finishers to score as an official team, right? And I've seen teams that only have 3 or 4 runners. And what they do is their individual results count, but then their team just goes down as incomplete. So it's tricky because when you only have 4, there's not much you can really do. So then the focus becomes less on team wins because you kind of can't in a way. And it becomes more on, all right, we're just looking for our individual bests from what we have to work with. Pretty much work with what you got. And both the men's and women's swim and dive teams will be at home again on Saturday as they take on Baldwin Wallace. There's a few seasons, as I mentioned, I already talked about the soccer team, the women's tennis team, women's tennis season is over as well. The women's volleyball team, this volleyball has got to be the longest season. I mean, the SUNYAC championships don't even start until November 7th. This team started their season back on September 1st, so they've been going a long time. They've played 20 games. They are 3-17. They had a really close one on Saturday. They were up 2-0 on Oswego. Then ultimately Oswego ended up coming back and winning in 5 sets. And that was ultimately the 5th straight loss for Fredonia, as they lost 3-0 to Cortland on Friday as well. So their overall record at 3-17. They're 1-6 in conference play. They still have 5 games left before the SUNYAC championships. They are at Potts. They got 2 more conference matchups left. They are at Potsdam at 6 o'clock on Friday, at Plattsburgh 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then we go into next week. Next Wednesday, they have a 7 p.m. match at Hilbert College. Then Friday, November 3rd at 5 o'clock, they head up to RIT to take on the Tigers. And then Saturday, November 4th at noon, they are taking on Carnegie Mellon, and that game will be played at Geneseo's campus. And then we roll into SUNYAC tournaments. RIT, of course, is Division III for a handful of sports, like basketball they are, volleyball they are. And then hockey is their exception. Their hockey programs are Division I, the men's and women's programs. Both are. They used to be D3, but then they won a lot. Then that's pretty much exactly it. I mean, the men's program won the D3 championship, moved up to D2, won that, and now they're in D1. And the women's hockey program won the D3 championship in 2012, and so now they are Division I as well. And I mentioned last week, for anybody who may remember, I was talking last week about just like creating a Blue Devils atmosphere similar to some of the top places in college sports. And I mentioned RIT hockey because those games are insane. I mean, I highly recommend anybody who maybe is not familiar with RIT hockey, get up there for a game because those are incredible. They have a student section that stands in the corner. They're called the Corner Crew. They have a full-size pep band, and it's awesome. Speaking of college hockey teams, Fredonia's hockey season is underway. They had a scrimmage against the All-Stars from the Eastern Hockey League last Friday night. And the Eastern Hockey League, as I had mentioned, is a developmental junior league that a lot of the Blue Devils players played for before coming to Fredonia. Hockey's a little bit different. In other sports, traditionally, you go from high school straight to college. Hockey is not the case. Hockey usually go from high school, play 1 to 2 years of junior hockey, and then go to college. So hockey players usually a little bit older than other sports. Blue Devils won that one in overtime. The All-Stars certainly gave them a scare. Fredonia had a 2-1 lead with like 4 minutes to go, and they were on the power play, and then the EHL All-Stars scored a shorthanded goal to tie the game. And I could pretty much see from my vantage point, from calling the game, I think I could actually see head coach Jeff Meredith's hair maybe going a little bit more gray. I'm sure Coach Meredith would not appreciate that if I said that. I'm sorry, Coach. But they played on Saturday as well. The Blue Devils did. They were at Buff State for a scrimmage. They tied that one 2-2. Their regular season begins on Friday. They got a trip to the Midwest coming up as they are taking on Trine University that is based out of Angola, Indiana. And puck drop on Friday night is slated for 7 p.m. and then 4 p.m. on Saturday as well. And their first home game of the season is slated for Friday, November 10th at 7 p.m. when they take on conference rival Buff State. I will be on the call for that game starting at 7 p.m. from Steel Hall Ice Arena. Be sure to either tune in or honestly, maybe even better yet, go to the game. I mean, Blue Devils hockey games, yes, it's not necessarily like a dynamic, crazy atmosphere, but they're fun. And the hockey games do usually get a solid turnout. And this looks like it could be a decent season. I mean, this was a team that, even though they only won 7 games last year, they still made the conference playoffs. So, I don't know. I definitely would encourage anybody to come out and support the Blue Devils. Those hockey games are just super fun. Everybody can have a great time. Even if you don't follow hockey, it's not super difficult to understand. You know, it seems like every kid played soccer growing up, right? So, like, if you played that, you've got a general basic understanding of how things work there. But anyways, I'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, I want to talk some baseball because the World Series matchup is set, and it is not what any of us predicted originally going into the playoffs, I don't think. But thanks for tuning in here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Be back in a few minutes. Before the hour
It's more a question of feeling than it is a question of fun. The confidence is the balaclava, I'm sure you'll baffle them good. With the ending reek of salty cheeks and runny makeup alone. Oh, we'll put a run down the face of a boy who will scorn. When you find yourself in a skirmish where you wish you'd never been born. You tie yourself to the tracks and there isn't no going back. And it's wrong, 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 but we'll do it anyway, it's full of a bit of trouble. From a burning building or throwing it to the sharks. Can all you're at the ending is as pleasurable as the start. The confidence is the balaclava, I'm sure you're back on straight. And it's wrong, 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 she can hardly wait. That's right, he won't let her out his side. Now the shaggers perform and the daggers are drawn. Who's the crooks in this cry? That's right, he won't let side. Now the shaggers perform and the daggers are drawn. Who's the crooks in this crime? Keep on the balaclava.
You're listening to WCVF 88.9 FM, the voice of Fredonia.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. So I mentioned before we headed a break that the World Series matchup is set, and it is not what any of us predicted. Yeah. I mean, if anyone would have said, let's time travel back for a second. Let's go back in time. My microphone is so high up. I am not that tall. So let's go back in time about 3 years. And if you said to anyone that the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks were going to meet in the World Series, I think people would look at you like you had four heads. I mean, this is a Texas team that lost, what was it, like 104 games 2 years ago? And then they made their big free agent signings. You know, they brought in Marcus Semien and Corey Seager and still lost, like 94 games last year? And then they go out, they get Jacob deGrom, you know. They get, my mind is completely blanking right now. Who else did they get? They got somebody else good. Jeez, I just can't remember because I don't know. But, you know, Nathan Eovaldi. Jeez, wow, why did that take forever to come to me? So, you know, they go out and they get some really good pitchers. They get a lot of help, whatever. And Texas had a good season, but they lost out on their division title because Houston, for all intents and purposes, on paper, is still the best team in the American League, you know. And at least I would think so. I don't think anybody is challenging them for that, really. But, you know, the Rangers made the playoffs as a wild card team, and they swept the top seed Orioles in the wild card round, or the ALDS, I should say. They beat Holy cow, who did they beat? I gotta look at the bracket because now I'm just like totally blanking. It's easy to forget. Tampa Bay, jeez. So they beat the Rays, beat them in both games in the wild card round. Then they play the Orioles, the number 1 seed Orioles, and sweep them in 3 games. And Texas gets to the ALCS against the Houston Astros, the big bad Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions. And Texas falls behind 3-2. Now I want to flip to the American League real fast, and there's a reason for that. The Arizona Diamondbacks were like the worst team in baseball. Was it last year? They won 5 of 45 games at one point and were just genuinely awful. And this year, with their young talent, they got Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, Jake McCarthy. And they already have guys like, Ketel Marte and Christian Walker. They had traded for Lourdes Gurriel Jr. The Diamondbacks make it in as the last team in. And they beat the Brewers in 2 games. The NL Central champ Brewers beat them in both games in the wild card round. NLDS matched up against the 2 seed Dodgers, the big bad Dodgers, and they sweep them. Because the Diamondbacks, there's a reason why they're being nicknamed the Answerbacks. Because if you have a lead on Arizona, the way they're playing right now, you are probably not holding on to that lead. Because Arizona has had such a knack for coming back and winning games all postseason long. Then you get to the NLCS. Arizona against the Philadelphia Phillies, the defending National League champions. And they fall behind 3-2. Okay? And what do the Rangers and Diamondbacks do? Both of them go on the road to the defending champions of their respective leagues and win not only Game 6, but also win Game 7. That is the first time in baseball history that has ever happened. Just let that sink in for a minute. The fact that baseball's been around for years and years and years, and something happened last night for the first time ever. And something else has a chance to happen for the first time ever if the Texas Rangers win the World Series. This is not 2 teams that you usually see in the Fall Classic. The Rangers and Diamondbacks have combined for, in their entire respective histories, 3 World Series appearances and 1 win. The Rangers have been there twice. They went back-to-back years. If you can think back that far, the Rangers were really good in the early 2010s. And they had Josh Hamilton was winning the American League MVP. They had Nelson Cruz, and they had traded for Adrian Beltre. They had Ian Kinsler was good. They had C.J. Wilson was an all-star pitcher. Neftali Feliz was the best closer in baseball for a hot minute. Alexi Ogando was a great reliever. They had, Elvis Andrus too. How could I forget about Elvis Andrus? They had a really good team, a loaded team. And they went to the World Series in 2010 and completely fell flat on their faces. Got cakewalked by the Giants. Then the Rangers go back. They win 95 games in 2011, get back to the World Series. They're matched up against the St. Louis Cardinals. The Rangers were 1 strike away from winning it all, and they lost. And, of course, as I've said on this show a few times, I am a Cardinals fan, so that World Series is a little special. I still think the 2011 World Series run by the Cardinals is the best playoff run in the history of baseball, and I don't know that anything will ever top it, but someday I'll go into a whole... There you go. That someday, if there's like a lull in things going on with sports, I'll just go into a deep dive on the 2011 Cardinals play. That's what I should do. I should do like my special playoff runs or whatever. If I had more time, I absolutely would. But there's other things to get to today, other things to talk about. So The Diamondbacks, on the other side of that, the Diamondbacks made it to the World Series in just there. So the Diamondbacks have only been a team since 1998. They made it to the World Series in 2001, just the fourth season that they existed. They were matched up against the Yankees, who had won the last 3 straight World Series, and the Diamondbacks beat them. Remember, that was when the Diamondbacks had both. They had Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling. They also had Luis Gonzalez was really good. They had some other excellent players. That 2001 Diamondbacks team was like really, really good. And they won the World Series. They've never been back since. So it's interesting that you get 2 teams, and I think it's great for baseball, to be completely honest. I think it's great for the game that you get 2 teams that are not usually in it that are in it this year. I think that is fantastic for baseball because I think that fans get tired of seeing, Houston or the Dodgers or back when they were, a relevant franchise, the Red Sox or the Yankees. Sorry, I had to take the opportunity to take a shot at the Red Sox and the Yankees. Was I going to come on here today and not pick on a Boston team? Come on now. But, I think fans get tired of seeing the same teams winning every year because it's always your big market teams, right? You think about, Houston right now is just dominant. You think about Houston, you think about the Dodgers, maybe even the Atlanta Braves. You think about maybe teams like the Yankees or the Red Sox. And I think that teams honestly get sick and tired. I think fans get sick and tired of seeing the same teams competing for a championship year after year after year. And this year was just the poster child for parity. I mean, just some of the teams that missed the playoffs, like the New York Mets, San Diego Padres with all their talent, St. Louis Cardinals, don't even want to talk about it, and the Yankees and Red Sox. Those 5 teams all missed the playoffs this year. That's wild. And the San Francisco Giants, who were so good 2 years ago and are seemingly always at least relevant, Giants missed the playoffs too. I mean, it's what is going on? It's crazy to see that teams, and football's kind of the same way right now. The fact that your dominant teams right now were terrible for years before a few years ago. Sometimes I still have to sit back and be like, what do you mean that the Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Kansas City Chiefs are the top teams in the AFC? What are you talking about? I grew up watching all 4 of those teams be more or less terrible. But, the Bengals would make the playoffs from time to time, but they'd never do anything in the playoffs. So your World Series is set. Rangers, Diamondbacks, Game 1 in Texas on Friday. That's going to be a fun World Series. I'm really, really excited. That is going to be just a really fun fall classic, and I think it's going to be an excellent matchup to watch. Game 1, first pitch is scheduled for 8:03 on Friday. So we'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, let's talk about the Sabres and last night's Frozen Frenzy, everything going on around the NHL as they tried a little bit of an experiment with all 32 teams, 16 games, all teams playing pretty much at the same time. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for tuning in here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
Box of lemons and I told myself I'm losing again. Been a long time coming, I'm drowning and I'm feeling within. Look around here, you know you're not my friend. Long hard look and I told myself I'm losing again. And I showed her the way. And what more could I say? could I do? She was the one I'd chase around the sun. If I could just follow through. Try to get away. Everybody now think they got the right way. I remember what you said to me. Everybody now think they live it wanted me. And I told herself. What more could I do? She was the one I'd chase around the sun. If I could just follow through. And she was the one I'd chase around the sun. If I could just follow through.
Tune in to News at Noon on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon, with an additional news segment on High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon. News at Noon gives you your local, campus, and international updates, as well as sports and weather. Be sure to tune in.
And you can tune in to News at Noon later today to hear all about the updates on Fredonia sports, as well as the Bills and Sabres and what's going on in the baseball playoffs. Also, Sigma Tau Delta and the Writers Ring are collaborating to host an open mic night. Anyone can join the event to show off their works of writing, poetry, magic tricks, playing live music, and more. The event will be held in the Fenton Lounge, where the vending machines are on the first floor, and will be on October 28th at 3 p.m. That is this Saturday. So, last night, the NHL tried something that I thought was interesting. So every week, the NFL has their NFL Red Zone channel, which means that they bounce back and forth from game to game because there's a lot of games going on at the same time. The NHL kind of tried that last night. They had what was called a frozen frenzy. So every single team in the league played last night, and they kind of staggered the start times. Like they had the first game was Toronto-Washington. Puck drop was at 6:15. Then Buffalo and Ottawa was at 6:45. And then Carolina and Tampa Bay was at 7, and so on. And so what they tried to do was kind of emulate that, because the NFL Red Zone has just taken off in popularity. And the NHL is kind of trying to replicate that. So they had a program on ESPN2 that was called the Frozen Frenzy. They had their feature game, it was Boston and Chicago, that played on ESPN. And then during the intermission, they would go to the Frozen Frenzy or whatever, and they would go back and forth from game to game to game. And they'd show every goal or every big save or big hit or stuff like that. I think it's interesting. I don't think that you're ever going to find it to be as popular as NFL Red Zone, just because of the fact that the NHL is not as popular as the NFL. But at the same time, I like that the NHL is trying to do things like that. I commented this to a friend of mine last night, that so if you have a subscription to ESPN Plus, you can watch any live out-of-market NHL game. and it's no additional charge. It comes with ESPN Plus. I, for one, think that is an excellent idea for the NHL. I think it's a great idea because the NHL, listen, hockey is it's a more niche sport than something like football or baseball or basketball, right? Hockey is kind of more of a regional sport. Not as much of a regional sport as like lacrosse. Go Bandits, by the way. I'm wearing my Josh Byrne Buffalo Bandits jersey for the first time today. And like it's not necessarily as regional of a sport as lacrosse is, but it's still a little bit, So I love that the NHL is trying to grow their fan base that way. I just wish that the commissioner and the league would stop doing stupid things like saying, hey, players, you can't wear rainbow tape you can't have rainbow stick tape because that's too political. And then also having things like Military Appreciation Night. Like I can't, Siri was going off for a second. She does that sometimes. You ever hear about like, you think like your phone and stuff is like listening into you? I swear I think my watch is listening into me. Because I'll just start saying something and I'll just be mid-sentence and then I'll hear from my right wrist, this is what I found on the web. And I'm like, Siri, why are you listening? Like, I didn't ask you to listen. But anyways, I think that the NHL needs to stop doing things like that. They need to be doing things that are promoting the game, right? Growing the game. And I think that having their games on ESPN Plus, I think that's a fantastic idea. Now, into the games themselves, or specifically the Sabres. The other games, Toronto beat Washington 4-1. Leafs are 4-2. The Lightning shut out Carolina 3-0. Devils, that's who Buffalo plays next. They beat Montreal 5-2. The Sharks are still winless on the season. They lost 3-1. The Avs are undefeated, beating the Islanders 7-4. Seattle scored one late. They scored with like 4 seconds left to win the game. They beat Detroit 5-4 in overtime. The Ducks beat the Blue Jackets 3-2 in overtime. Lucas Dostal made 35 saves for Anaheim. Jeez. The Bruins are still undefeated. They're 6-0. They beat the Blackhawks 3-0. So let's see who else. I know there were some other notable results. Oh yeah, the Golden Knights scored. Shea Theodore scored in like the final minute. Vegas is 7-0 on the season. Now to the Sabres. It was interesting. The Sabres more or less dominated most of this game. I mean, they were in command almost start to finish. Sabres led 5-1 after 2 periods of play. Then late in the game, things got a little interesting. Brady Tkachuk and Alex Tuck got into it, and there was a penalty on the Sabres, and Ottawa scored, and then on another power play, Ottawa scores again to make it 5-4. Or Joseph's goal wasn't on the power play. But they scored twice, 20 seconds apart, or they scored 3 goals in a total of like 3.5 minutes. And now it goes from being 5-1 to now it's 5-4. And it's like, okay, this makes me a little nervous. And then Tage Thompson trying to clear the zone because the Sabres got another penalty late in the game. Tage Thompson cleared it down the ice and it went all the way into the goal. Empty netter. Sabres beat Ottawa 6-4. Listen, the Sabres ran into some trouble late. Other than that, I thought Buffalo played an excellent game last night, especially considering the fact that they just played Monday night and lost a tough one. I thought the Sabres came out really strong, played a great game last night. I thought Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was fine. The defense, obviously, late in the game, what are you doing? I think the Sabres penalty kill looks legitimately good. And that was one of their main weaknesses from last year. If you remember, their penalty kill last year was a major weak point. So, I think that it is very encouraging to see that has improved so much. And I think that, I think defensively as a whole, the Sabres have gotten better. Now, they didn't really show that late in the game last night, but I think that the Sabres more or less, they played a great game, and they earned a win, absolutely. And to beat Ottawa, and to maybe rekindle that Senators rivalry a little bit. Oh man, if they could get that Buffalo-Ottawa rivalry back even close to the level of where it was about 16, 17 years ago, man, I remember as a little kid, I couldn't stand Ottawa. That was always, Ottawa was like, besides Boston, Ottawa was public enemy number one pretty much. We couldn't stand the Ottawa Senators. I still can't stand the Ottawa Senators, but I have to remain a certain degree of objectivity for the show, I think. I don't know. But the Sabres win it 6-4. It's their third win of the year. They are 3-4 in total, 1-1 on the road, and they are still on the road this Friday as they head to New Jersey to take on old pal Lindy Ruff and his New Jersey Devils. Let me tell you, that Devils team, they're pretty good. The Devils were my pick to win the Stanley Cup. They are a great young hockey team. The Sabres are certainly going to have their hands full. If I remember correctly, they're home today. I think that they came home from Ottawa last night, and they are practicing at home today and then heading to New Jersey tomorrow. And that's the beauty of, being not too far away. And because a flight from Buffalo to New Jersey's got to be like an hour or something like that, maybe hour and a half, whatever. But, so I think that that's certainly helpful that they're playing teams that are not too far from them so they can come home in between that sort of stuff. I think that the Sabres, like I said, they got their hands full, but New Jersey is a team that's where the Sabres are looking to be in a couple of years, maybe even next year or this year, where the Devils are. So it's a good test for Buffalo, and I'm excited to see how the game goes on Friday. No word on who's going to be in goal. I would guess Devin Levi because he's had the last few games off. I would think Levi will be between the pipes on Friday night, but that does remain to be seen. We'll take a quick break and then finish out the show talking about the Bills. Oh boy, do I have a lot to say. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for tuning in here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
I get lost, running circles in my mind. That's the cost of living the dream as you and I. And all our friends are growing up, some are going gray. But look at us, we have an easy day. Nothing else that I could ever need. And our friends are busy waiting for that rainy day. I got hope. You will always be there at the end of my road. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me. There's nothing else that I could hope. I got hope. That you will always be there at the end of my road. As long as I got you to take need.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
Hey, I'm just calling to let you know that you're listening to WCVF 88.9 The Voice.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. I realized in the commercial break that today is actually the I got to do the math for a second, the 32-year anniversary of the Sabres trading for Pat LaFontaine, who is a franchise icon, has his number 16 retired. And that was a big trade at the time, too. Back in 91, the Sabres had traded. It was Pierre Turgeon, who was a former number 1 overall pick and a great player in his own right. He'll be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in November. And they traded him, Benoit Hogue. They traded Uwe Krupp, who later became famous for scoring the overtime winning goal for the Colorado Avalanche to clinch the Stanley Cup in 1996. And Dave McElwain, who I don't know too much about, admittedly. And they acquired Pat LaFontaine, Randy Hiller, and Randy Wood. Randy Wood's son, I should have mentioned this before. Randy Wood's son, Miles, used to play for the New Jersey Devils, doesn't anymore. Sabres play the Devils on Friday. I don't know, cool little segue. You know what was not cool? The Bills on Sunday. Oh boy, was that one rough. 29-25. The Bills lose to the Patriots, who are one of the worst teams in the league. The Bills, whose offense is supposed to be, and I put that in about the heaviest air quotes humanly possible, their offense is supposed to be one of the best units in the league. Really? Because where was that on Sunday? 3 points in the first half. 3. You got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, all these playmakers on your offense. You're playing against a New England team that is 1-5. The Patriots had allowed 31 points per game in their last 3 weeks. You put up 3 points in the first half. That is yet another pathetic and embarrassing performance from an offense that looks like they are in shambles right now. I don't know what is wrong with them, but they might want to figure it out. I'm not sitting here saying that, oh, the Super Bowl window is closing, the sky is falling, but they might want to figure it out because that team has problems right now. A lot of them. I don't know if it's just execution is terrible, coaching is terrible, or a combination of both, but something is wrong at One Bills Drive right now. You got a short week. Hope they figured it out before they play Tampa Bay tomorrow night. Hope they don't embarrass themselves yet again, like they already have multiple times this year. They've already embarrassed themselves. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the logic that I look at. The Bills have already embarrassed themselves on a Monday night game against the Jets. They've already embarrassed themselves on a Sunday night game against the Giants. Why not embarrass yourselves on Thursday night too? They might want to figure it out because what's going on right now is pathetic. It's laughable. I think I called it disgusting on News at Noon on Monday, and I still stand by that. I mean, with an offense that's supposedly loaded with this much talent and all this sort of great things that we've been hearing about them, you put up 3 points in the first half. Are you kidding me? That is ridiculous. There is no excuse for that. There is no justifying that. Your defense, who is, beaten and battered, they've got multiple guys who are more than likely out for the season. And yes, the defense should not have let Mac Jones drive all the way down the field at the end of the game and win. Mac Jones, who had been awful this year. But I don't know. Maybe if the offense bothered to show up every once in a while, that would be all right. I don't know. Whereas if I squint hard enough, maybe I can see Gabe Davis on the field. Because otherwise, he's just completely vanished. Dawson Knox, I'm not going to try and talk too many bad things about Knox. He is injured. What did Knox do on Sunday? Nothing. What did the offensive line do on Sunday? Nothing. What did Josh Allen do on Sunday? Absolutely nothing. You are paying these guys. The offense is not injured. The offense is healthy for the most part. What are they doing? Nothing. That is ridiculous. That is unacceptable. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it's the play calling, it's the execution, what's going on. Fix it. Because other teams are going out there and getting better. The Buffalo Bills are sitting on their couches and signing some 35-year-old defensive back who hasn't been good in the last 6 years. Just because Sean McDermott likes him. I don't know. Maybe McDermott should spend less time pacing up and down the sidelines, clapping all the time, and actually game planning. I don't know. If I sound furious today, y'all should have heard me on Sunday. I was not happy. There is nobody involved with the Buffalo Bills organization that should be the slightest bit proud of the slop fest that they put out there on Sunday. Nobody should be proud of the way they've played over the last few weeks. Actually, no. There's like a couple players. James Cook should be proud of the way he played on Sunday. He was excellent. Dalton Kincaid should be proud of the way he played on Sunday. He had the best game of his career so far. Outside of that, who played well? Not very many guys. You have way too many games where your players are just not showing up. That can't happen. If you have aspirations of going to the Super Bowl, and we might want to temper those expectations, if you have aspirations of going anywhere, you cannot have game after game where your guys just aren't showing up, and then the post-game press conference is the same old song and dance of, we just got to execute better. We just really got to do a better job. And, we just got to execute better. We keep telling ourselves that, we can't make those mistakes, and we'll learn from it. We'll get better. We just got to be better. Really? When were you getting better? I saw you get worse. I don't know where the Bills think they're getting better. They're getting better at playing down to competition and losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to, if that's what you mean by getting better. Sunday's performance was laughable. They have a short week. They play against Tampa tomorrow night. Please don't blow it. I don't know. I won't drag on for too long because I've got 4 minutes left, and realistically, I could rant about the Bills for like an hour, but I had an hour to cover other things, so lucky you. Anyways, I'll finish out my show like I usually do, making my picks for the weeks. And what do you know? The Bills are up first. You know what? No, I'm going to do them last. I usually do. So the Sunday games, the 3-4 LA Rams heading to Dallas to take on the 4-2 Cowboys. According to ESPN, 84% of voters going with the Cowboys. I actually think this is going to be a close game. I think the Rams might play. You know what? I'm going to go with the upset. That'll be my upset pick of the week. The Rams go into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. The Rams are better than people think they are this year. The 3-4 Minnesota Vikings heading into Green Bay to take on the 2-4 Packers. 81% of voters going with the Vikings. I'm also surprised to see this is to be so much of a discrepancy. I agree. I think the Vikings will win, but I think it's going to be a much closer game. The Vikings cannot be trusted in any game. The Vikings went out and beat the 49ers on Monday night. The Vikings have also played down to competition at many times this season. Other 1 o'clock games, the 4-3 Atlanta Falcons heading to Tennessee to take on the 2-4 Titans. 56% of voters going with the Falcons. I'm going to agree with them. I think Desmond Ridder has played like garbage, but at the same time, Tennessee is also in shambles right now, so I'll go with the Falcons. The 3-4 New Orleans Saints heading into Indianapolis to take on the 3-4 Colts. 51% of voters taking the Colts in this game. I'm interested to see it that close. I definitely think the Colts win that game. 1 o'clock, this one on CBS, the 2-5 Patriots heading to Miami to take on the 5-2 Dolphins. 97% of voters going to the Dolphins. Teams who are actually good in the AFC should probably beat the Patriots. I'll pick the Dolphins. A New York battle, the 3-3 Jets and the 2-5 Giants. 82% of voters going with the Jets. I disagree with that. I think the Giants win. I think Tyrod Taylor's playing well right now. I think the Giants win that game. I can't believe that only 18% of voters are picking the Giants. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 5-2 heading to Pittsburgh to take on the 4-2 Steelers. 75% of voters going with the Jags. I'm going to agree with them. I think Jacksonville wins. The 6-1 Eagles heading to Washington to take on the 3-4 Commanders. 95% of voters going with the Eagles. I'll agree. I think Philadelphia wins that one. The 3-3 Texans heading to Carolina to take on the 0-6 Panthers. 83% of voters going with the Texans. I'm going to agree. C.J. Stroud's playing well right now, and the Panthers still searching for their first win. Now we get into the lone 4:05 kickoff. The 4-2 Browns heading to Seattle to take on the 4-2 Seahawks. 63% of voters going with the Seahawks. That's going to be a good game. I think the Seahawks win it. 4:25 window, got to go speed round here. The 6-1 Chiefs heading to Denver to take on the 2-5 Broncos. 97% of voters going with the Chiefs. I'm going to agree. I think Kansas City definitely wins that game. The 5-2 Ravens heading to Arizona to take on the 1-6 Cardinals. 98% of voters going with the Ravens. I will agree. 4:25, the 3-3 Bengals heading to San Francisco to take on the 5-2 49ers. 81% of voters going with San Francisco. That 49ers team is going to come out angry after their loss. I think they're going to beat the Bengals. The Sunday night game, really, the Bears and Chargers. Bears 2-5, Chargers 2-4. 89% of voters going with the Chargers. That's going to be a terrible game, but the Chargers, I think, are going to win it. And then Monday night, the 3-4 Raiders heading to Detroit to take on the 5-2 Lions. 96% of voters going with the Lions. I think it's going to be the same case of the 49ers. The Lions got embarrassed last week. I think the Lions are going to come out really angry and blow out the Raiders on Monday night. And finally, tomorrow night's game, the 4-3 Buffalo Bills hosting the 3-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 95% of voters going with the Bills. I guess I'll pick the Bills. I'm kidding. I'll pick the Bills. I think the Bills rebound and get the win. Their offense had better show up, though. Let me tell you. Their offense had better show up. So the Bills go to 5-3. Well, that'll do it for another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in to listening to me rant for another week. And I will not be back next week as I will be down in the great state of Georgia for the Associated Collegiate Press Conference down in Atlanta with the leader staff. So I will see you in 2 weeks on November 8th. In the meantime, keep it real, everybody, and enjoy the Bills game tomorrow night. I will not be going to this one, actually, but enjoy the game, and, go Blue Devils. Have a good one, everybody.